live. Welcome back to the Prepare Like a Pro live chat show. My name is Jack McLean. I am the host, and tonight my guest is Josh Growden. He's the coach owner of the Kicking Consultant, drafted by the GWS Giants. However, due to an injury to his broken leg, and 2 hip operations, cut his career short, which I'm sure we'll go into some rehabilitation. He's now studying his high performance manager course, so we can get nerdy with the strength and conditioning side of things. But with a fresh outlook in life, he decided to take punting with Prokick Australia. Here he earned a scholarship to one of the biggest football colleges in the United States, LSU. And before we start tonight's episode, our mission here at Prepare Like a Pro is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. Josh has now got a business where it's helping athletes improve their kicking efficiency, both for distance, power, and accuracy, as well as adding in a strength and conditioning element to it as well. So really looking forward to the show, guys. If you like the show and you're watching live, this is also a podcast, so you can support us by following us on Instagram, where you can watch all the short little snippets of the live chats, and also subscribe to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. But welcome, Josh. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Jack.
We'll dive straight into it. Cool background too. I love all the memorabilia.
Got that from those YouTube videos I used to watch, where you'd always people had that interesting stuff in the background to keep you focused a bit.
Yeah. Is there something that's always in there that only a true fan would know about? Like, do you always put in this one little thing that that blue drink bottle always there? Or is that...
No, I haven't quite built up that community yet, I don't think. I just put in stuff that I think looks cool.
We'll dive straight into it, mate. Take us back to the early days when you were discovering your passion as a footballer. At what age did you start playing footy, and when did you discover you had talent to be able to take it to the highest level?
Yeah, so I grew up in country South Australia and played my first game of footy when I was 5 or 6, filling in for my brother's mini Colts team. So I'm not sure what the age group for that was, maybe under 12s or something. So a fair age difference. But yeah, I guess, I don't know really when I figured out I was decent, but just as you get older and you just progress through the ranks, maybe when I was 15, I won some runner up in the best and fairest for the association, and then played some state footy, and then probably the AIS. When I got selected into the AIS, I was like, okay, yeah, this could be AFL. My dream of playing AFL, which I had when I was young, I was like, this could be a possibility.
Yeah. And did you shift your mindset at that stage when you're in the AIS program? I imagine you got exposed to an elite environment and what it is to be a high performing athlete. Did that change the fun element, but also did it change your professionalism to it all?
Yeah, no, I think that was established a bit earlier, probably with Woodville West Torrens, with the under 16 SNFL development. We definitely got introduced to a bit more professionalism. The AIS was a lot of fun, and I got into that probably the end of 2010, and then soon after was selected by the Giants. So I think I was already kind of prepared, and was still, absolutely loving my footy.
Yeah. Okay. And with the AIS program, apart from the selection process, which obviously then where you sit amongst the competition, but what were some things that coaches were doing and even support teammates and your family to help you support your football development back then?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was everything outside of football. And I think that was the biggest thing with AIS was helping that transition. So, going through all the nutrition side of things, just, how to manage your body. But yeah, definitely the insights that the amazing coaches we had, I guess just more the structures. So you're coming from, under 16, 17, where there's a little bit, but learning more game plan and things like that was probably the biggest thing for me that I got from, being surrounded by those coaches.
Yeah. And were there any surprises then when you were in the system, looking back to that development program? Were there anything that you felt like were missed in the development pathways, or did you feel like you were pretty well prepared?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've never really thought about it. Things top of my head was probably when we're at the Giants was like just interchange. Like we would plan out like the first probably quarter of how the interchange was going to work. Like, okay, if you're starting on, you've got 3 minutes, then you've got to come off, and then you go to here, and like things like that. Playing different roles, knowing what each position did. So if you were playing on the wing and then you had to roll up to half forward flank or half back flank, and how that works in the rotation. So that's something off the top of my head. But yeah, there's probably a few more things as you get to that next level.
Yeah, the level of detail of everything that's
I think that's a good way of encapsulate everything, just more detail. Yeah.
And who were some strong influences in your development through the junior ranks?
Oh, through the junior ranks. So a big one that stands out, I guess, for me was at the Giants, John Quinn. So I think you've had John on the show, right? Yeah. So he was a big.
His name's probably popped up the most, I reckon.
Yeah. So as you know, a legend, and he was a big influence and mentor, and still is for me. So yeah, definitely in the football AFL.
What specifically, like, why did he pop up first in mind? Why did he?
I think like, so one of my very first weeks, so he was, at the Giants, obviously. We were all very young, and just from the get-go, we got along really well. And then after breaking my leg, an injury that I don't even know if he had ever really had to deal with. And, just the bond that you make, you're in rehab and he's running your program and things like that. So we became very close then. And I think he's has genuine care for everyone, very authentic, very wise, thinks he's pretty funny. So yeah, he made trainings enjoyable, even when it was tough, like being in rehab so much.
And was he managing facilitating the sessions, or was he more managing the program?
More the program, yeah. Actually, Tim Parham, who I think you're having on next Tuesday, he as when he came to the club, he would have come through a couple months after I just broke my leg, and he helped manage me a bit more.
Okay. And you mentioned that the level of detail. You're focusing a lot now of helping kids develop their kicking technique. Did you have someone help you with your kicking technique through your junior pathways, or?
No, and that's the thing. That's the thing. I was literally just talking.
Bizarre,
isn't it crazy? Just talking to one of the kids I teach's dads just yesterday, and he was like, "No one's teaching this," and I was like, "Yeah, no one's teaching me either." Like when I was at the Giants, Choco was big on it. He's always been big on his kicking, but I was like, it's just kind of like you're expected to know how to kick by then. And looking back, like no one really ever taught me. I learned more about kicking a football in my 5 years of punting than I did 15 years of growing up playing footy. It's crazy. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where I felt like it was needed.
Yeah, in a similar sense, it's like you never really taught growing up. Like you play a lot of sport, and even in PE dodgeball, and you're always competing and playing fun games. There's a lot of enjoyment factor, which is obviously important. But learn how to run unless you do athletics.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Learn how to run. So there's some fundamental skills and athlete development there that I guess it seems like are now starting to change with people like yourself working in the private sector, and strength and conditioning coaches going into high schools now that have had experience at elite level. So there's a bit of a shift in Australian culture.
I think it's interesting that you say Australian, because being in America, like you see the strength and conditioning at the young age that it starts. It's crazy. It's great. It's great. Like they come in 18-year-olds looking like grown men, and then hasn't stunted their growth like some people think that's going to happen when you start lifting weights early. They're just absolutely developed athletes. I think that we are starting to make that cultural switch, and it's only going to be beneficial to individuals and hopefully our country when we start competing in international sports such as the Olympics and whatnot, having these more developed athletes because they've started it earlier.
Yeah, 100%. And it's something we'll get into, I reckon, a bit further on when we'll go along your sort of career progression from the athlete and then into the athlete over in America, and then obviously you're coaching now as well. So, but from the junior pathway, so you mentioned you're growing up in Adelaide. Take us through draft night. Were you expected to get drafted? Take us through all the emotions of that night.
Yeah, so I actually didn't get drafted. I was pre-selected as one of the 12, 17-year-olds that the GWS Giants got access to.
So you're with Dylan Shield.
Yeah, Dylan Shield, Adam Treloar, Jeremy Cameron. Yeah, so it was more of a, well, I guess it was, they'd picked a few guys, and then I was invited to the combine like early, like the year before I was supposed to, with a bunch of guys, and there was 6 spots left, and I think they invited 12 of us there. So it was getting to that point where it's like, okay, it's virtually a 50-50 chance, and and then it was just, you're like, oh, it's a new club. This is exciting. Like, this is cool. Like, this, you don't really know much about it. So it's a different set of excitement, I think, than what you get typically with the draft night and whatnot.
Yeah, and did you know going into that year that was a possibility? Was there whispers and rumors in the industry about?
Yes, yeah. So I had a pretty good year that year in the SNFL, and I think I was talking with managers. I would have been, and they were like, yeah, like, it's, from what they were hearing, it was pretty good. And then I even remember at the combine, so that's when I was in the AIS, and I said to Alan McConnell, who was heading up the Giants, I was like, oh, is it like going to be bad if, like, I'm still in the AIS, and if I get selected by you guys, like, I've still got 6 months left in the AIS? And like, no, that's like, we look highly on that. And I was like, oh, okay. He gave me like a little wink sort of thing. So I was like, yeah, about then I knew. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So what did that mean for year 12 and the rest of your life?
I know, yeah. Could have easily have just said, you know what, I'm done. But no, my mum's a teacher, and I've just always had that mindset to do the best in, I guess, everything I can. So stuck it out, and very grateful that I did, because we might touch on it later, but that's kind of what helped me get me into college, was my year 12 results, and into the university degrees here as well.
Yeah. Okay, and then take us through that year as a 17-year-old, moving and just the whole different lifestyle. Who were you living with? And take us through the.
Yeah, so the Giants did a great job of setting it up, and actually set it up like a college system in the US, where we were all, because we were quite young, but they all housed us in a place called Breakfast Point, which is kind of like like a college dorm type of scenario.
Yes.
So
is that where you reckon they got the idea from?
That is, yeah. Gubby Allen did a few trips to the US, and his son, I think, went to college, and that's where he got the idea from. So yes, 100%. So that was really cool. It was great being, everyone, like I said, similar age. I think the oldest players, we had like Phil Davis, Callan. Oh, at that stage, that was 2011 when I was there. It was just, we were all just young. We had, I think the oldest guy, we had Izzy Folau, and we had Jonathan Giles, was maybe like 25, 26, an older rookie, Steve Clifton. So young group, but we had the Lamberts, Craig and Mel Lambert, to look after us, who were awesome. And then things started heating up when the next year we were in the AFL. We got like Tom Scully and, like I said, Phil Davis, Callan Ward coming in. It was like, okay, this is starting to get real. And like Chad Corns, Luke Power, Dean Brogan, James McDonald, like these, gun AFL players. So started to add some maturity to the list. And then
how
each year
changed the dynamic of the group. Like, obviously the coaches, you had senior coaches around
you,
I imagine, trying to drive it, and you had a lot of talented players that would have been leaders as well. But having those older players that have been in systems for longer, was it tangible? Did you notice the training standards and everything shift?
100%. Even being out with injury, you could just see it's like what we thought was like the standard, or even not standard playing, but like how you conduct yourself off the field and with the film and all that. Like, that just went to another level when you've got 300 gamers in the room. So big time.
Yeah, and take us through the injury.
So 2011, playing the Suns up in Gold Coast, just got tackled as I was about to kick it and ended up kicking the back of my leg. So I broke my own leg essentially. So snapped the tibia and fibula straight in half. Had surgery, got a rod put through. And then, unfortunately, I was sat out for 350 days to the date. And then it never really quite came 100%. It was kind of just like, oh, well, there's only a couple of games left in the season. Let's try and play them. And, it was just like, just see what happens. And I got through, but it's still like, was quite painful doing any sort of agility stuff. Just that constant running on it. Not great. Don't recommend it.
Would have been, I've never been through a significant injury like that, but I imagine the trauma of the actual injury itself, but then also what you would have had to go through to rehabilitate yourself. And, in some sense, being in that environment would be amazing in terms of support, but at the same time, you're constantly in your own bubble in rehab when you're in that world and everyone else is playing footy and, doing what you want to be doing. It can make it different challenges, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
What did you learn about yourself and how did you grow with dealing with those challenges?
Definitely established some mental toughness. Like you said, it's very challenging mentally. You're so close, you're on AFL list and your dream's just to play, and then you've got new guys coming into the team, getting drafted, that year 2012, like everyone was getting a game. They were trialing everyone, so all these guys going past you, and then
opportunity.
Exactly. I was lucky I had a good mate, 𝐏𝐫𝐞. He did his ACL like a week or two before me, before I broke my leg. So we were in rehab for a long part together. But even that had its challenges because, he would reach certain milestones. And with an ACL, it's, there's like programs on how to manage an ACL, whereas with a broken leg, it's just like, well, they're all different. Like there's some things you can do. So,
loading is Tommy Mitchell's. There's so many different things that the research says how much you load the bone and.
Yeah. So it had, but it's tough, but definitely, and stronger for it. And definitely think that's prepared me for other ventures that I've done for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned it never felt quite the same. Is it the ability to handle a 10K training session, or was it the ability to spring and cut and change direction, kick long distance? What were the main sort of things?
Yeah, those first two you mentioned. So after a while, just running on it, like really starting, I think really bad shin splints, but along the side, along the fibula. Wasn't so much my tibia that was the problem, and then cutting, because it's putting that pressure on the fib as you cut. So anything like that, just pain, and it's like you don't have confidence in it when you're feeling that.
Yeah, and then that makes a lot of sense why the punting ambition started.
100%. When I found out about that, I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. Yeah.
And take us through, was it an easy decision to shift your mind and say, okay, I'm not ending the AFL dream, but I'm just going to focus on this for a little period of time, or was it something that you battled with for?
So I guess I did say I was ending the AFL dream, and I was very comfortable with that at that stage. So after I got delisted, there was tryouts for Prokick Australia for ex-AFL players, delisted AFL players. And honestly, I've always loved American football. Would get up early and watch it. Even I had 4 or 5 college football shirts that I'd bought online. And my plan was actually to play. So I was signed with Woodville, was doing the preseason. The plan was to study at university while playing for Woodville. If I didn't have a good year and get picked up in the AFL, I would go do an exchange to the States, because I just had this weird fascination for America. I love the sport and everything. So when I heard about punting, it was a no-brainer, honestly. Like I said, my leg wasn't that great. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go to America. You can get this full scholarship to get paid for. So it was not a difficult decision at all, to be honest.
And how much practice was kicking one of your strengths as a footballer?
So kicking long, like I was always above average, and honestly, like, yeah, like nothing crazy, like not like Trent McKenzie or anything like that. So yeah, I went to Melbourne and did an assessment with Prokick Australia, and they were like, "Yep, you'd be good enough." And then that meant moving there and training for 12 months before, getting the scholarship and moving to America.
And what would a training program look like for someone who's trying to improve? Like it's such a specific skill, you know.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
imagine there's a lot of conditioning required, or maybe there is. I've never worked with
Yeah,
someone.
no, there is, because you're required to fit in with the team, and the team is full of elite athletes. So it's a different
Standard.
style. Yeah. So it's more power based, sprint agility stuff. Honestly, the conditioning testing was a breeze, and it would be for any AFL footballer. But
What
it's the
was it?
speed. Oh, we had to do 16 110s every, like, on the in like so 1610 yards, so about 100 meters in
Yeah.
16 seconds, with like 45-second rest between reps.
On the minute. Yeah.
Yeah, virtually. Yeah. um yeah, so but yeah, training is yeah, very technique based, and I've always loved that. So I love training. It's funny, like, you think, oh, all you do is kick a ball, but it's like, it's so fun. It's so cool. You just try to roost the ball every time. And punting isn't easy. Like, it seems simple, but you've got to kick off 2 steps. You've got to catch it and kick it within 1.2 seconds. The ball is less forgiving. You're kicking in front of 100,000 people, and you only might get 4 kicks a game. You don't want to mess it up. So you've got to get hang time. You've got to put it where the team thinks that you're supposed to be putting it. You've got these freak athletes returning the ball. You've got these big athletes trying to block your punt. So there's a lot to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure, like you said. There's not a lot
Yeah.
of opportunities to
Mm.
get it. Almost like I imagine a batsman. Once they're out, they're
Yeah.
out. Like
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
that shot, and then also the pressure of some beasts coming at you.
Yeah.
Even though you got padding, no one
Oh,
wants to be tackled by those guys.
yeah, especially when you're in a vulnerable position of kicking, like, yeah.
Yeah,
Like I said, that's how I broke my leg. So
yeah, and the year of preparation. Were there other things going in your life, or was I imagine there was, but where was that in terms of your priority? Were you going
oh,
all in on that, and that
all
was
in,
your
all
number
in.
one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
all in. So yeah, Nathan Chapman and now John Smith do a great job of running Prokick Australia. It's like a very yeah, pretty high standard program. You've got your strength training as well. We have theory sessions to learn about the game. But yeah, training would be 3 to 4 times a week. And yeah, Nathan did a great job of mixing it up. Sessions were never boring, they're never the same, but we'd work on the intricate details that were needed. And Nathan, he played AFL, played, like, pretty much deserved a contract with Green Bay Packers, but then moved back to Australia and started Pro Kick. And his eye for punting and kicking is next level.
awesome. And then talk us through how LSU came on board.
Mm.
What's the drafting process with college? Did you have to
Yeah.
do an exam as well? Like you mentioned, the scores were important. Year 12
Yep.
was important.
Yep.
What's the process for those that are interested?
Yeah. So I guess the process for any Australian is to go through Pro Kick Australia. It's very hard. There's just no way you do it on your own. But yeah, we would pretty much get to the point where I was producing good film, like good footage of me punting, and that's trying to be as little editing as possible. It's like a kick after kick hitting a big ball that goes, that hits the standards. We'd send that over to colleges, and now it's getting to the point where colleges are reaching out to Pro Kick, and that's been going on for a few years now. But yeah, we knew we'd had Pro Kick had placed an Aussie at LSU before me, and his time was coming to an end because you can only play for 4 to 5 years. And I was like, okay, well, LSU, here's the next guy if you want him. And yeah, it was literally off a YouTube video that they saw. They were like, yep, here's a full $250,000 US scholarship.
Wow. And what did you study? What?
I studied pretty much the equivalent of human movement. emphasis on fitness studies, and I kind of made it around sport.
Yeah, awesome. And then what was the program like with LSU and studying, and what was it like? Like, were you living in the dorms and?
Yep. So I just wanted to touch on maybe I missed the question about the SATs, the testing for that. That's pretty important that you make sure your schooling's right, because they take from year 9 to year 12 to then get admitted into college. So I just want to make sure people know of that, because that's very important, the academic side of it. The college program at LSU was awesome. The US do things differently. And then, living on campus was sick. It was similar-ish to what the Giants had put together. Definitely some similarities there. But I was a bit older than most, so I went over to college at 21 when most are starting at 18. So that was good for me, just to be a bit more mature and ready for what was to come. And I think having that experience with the Giants definitely helped.
And how much was what was harder in the American program from a strength and conditioning point of view compared to GWS, and what was harder in the GWS program compared to preparing as a punter?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is the style of coaching. So here in Australia, I feel like we have two-way communication. It's not you can be like, oh, why are we doing that? The communication on is, it's a lot better. In America, it's very authoritarian. You just do this, and that's what I said, and you'll do it. So
it's not a conversation or
no, and that's just the way it is. It's yes, sir. It's not, oh yeah, thanks, mate. It's yes, sir. So the different styles of coaching is definitely the biggest. And then it was all power based, so lifting heavy, and they get crazy. They are slapping each other. They've got heavy metal music going. They're sniffing, those salts or whatever they are. It's good. You definitely got around it. It probably took me a year, but I loved it, and I've taken a little bit of that into my coaching now.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about before, certainly Australia's leading the way, it seems, in the world in terms of sports medicine and science. The high performance that goes on in America, and the reputation to push the boundaries of what humans can achieve is pretty awesome.
And I think that's something that I've taken away, and it's something that we should, as a culture, is not forget that heavy lifting and just the basic fundamentals of powerlifting are great. Pushing your athletes to get the most out of them, as opposed to being oh, what's his training load like? Maybe we need to tone things down a bit. There's got to be that bit of balance, and I think we've got to be careful not to go too sciencey and look into the data and forget about we're humans, and we can get more or be more beneficial to an athlete by maybe pushing them a bit harder.
100%. Couldn't agree more, mate. Lucas has just written in a question. Which career path did you enjoy more, AFL or college football? It's a good question, Lucas.
That's a great question. And I think it'd be different if I wasn't injured, but I 100% enjoyed my 4 years at LSU over my 3 years at Giants, but different circumstances. College can be fun. It is fun. Football is at that level. It's a job. Both have high pressures. Both are very demanding, but as an Aussie being in America, it's very fun. It's very new. It's kind of it's holiday to a degree, because everything's so different. Exactly. But it's just, and everything's on a bigger scale there. So if I was to weigh that up to maybe a 10-year successful AFL career, then things might be different.
Of course. And what about the crowd and the atmosphere? You mentioned 100,000. Would you compare that to 100,000 grand final MCG and 100,000 college American football game? What do you reckon?
American football for sure. Because the thing is, that's 90,000 are for the home team, and maybe 5,000 to 10,000 are the away team.
Yeah, of course.
So AFL grand final, got probably 50-50. And this is happening virtually every week too. So big parade, fireworks, the lot. The crowd, like the student section, is ridiculously loud. So there's a section for the students of the university, and virtually the whole stadium knows different chants for different scenarios of the game, and it's next level. It's so next level. At one point, we have a tiger. Our mascot was a tiger, so we had a real live living tiger habitat on campus, and he would actually, before Peter kind of kicked up a fuss, which was fair enough, he would actually get carted around the stadium before the game and plonked next to the entrance for the away team. So just a bit of an insight of how crazy it really is over there.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. And then you mentioned challenges, like it took about a year to adjust to that different intensity and the way they go about things compared to Australian way with performance and the culture and even the communication where it was directive.
Yeah.
What would you say was the biggest challenge and biggest learning curve, like as a person, that you got the most out of? Was it being able to learn a new sport? Was it the different culture change? Was it studying, living in a dorm in another country? Like what aspect of it do you think you got the most?
I think just being a part of it, like I wasn't coaching it, I was like living it. And it was just so good to learn a whole new other domain of sports science and sports training. So like I said, the more power, speed, agility side of things. Coming from AFL, which is very much, aerobic capacity, endurance based. So being a part of that and going through it, and it's a multi-million-dollar program. So the high stakes, what it's like being coached by a strength and conditioning coach who's been in the system for 20 years, and he's relying on good performance on the weight room that transfers out into the field, or else the coach loses his job, and in turn he loses his job. So seeing that side of things really is eye-opening, and especially for anyone who wants to work over in the US. And a lot of Aussies are having good success in the field over there, but it's a different ball game.
Yeah. And do you think that because of that competitiveness and how challenging it is with the high stakes and the amount of money that's involved, that's I imagine the work ethic is next level with this?
Exactly. Yeah. And another thing is, with college, they only have a small amount of hours they're allowed to work with us. So it's just NCAA rules and regulations. So different to the AFL, where it's like your job. So they're trying to cram in as much as they can in this. I think it's the 20 hours a week or something like that. So, we would go from doing all our sprint work, to then like running inside, doing our weightlifting stuff. And then it's okay, like recovery, whatnot. And they try to be very efficient and get as much, squeeze every drop out of you as they can.
And how individualized, like we talked about the sports medicine side before, and GPS sports science, AFL is quite specific and individualized, and every player has their own program. Was it the same in that system, or was everyone expected to do this, get through the work together?
Yeah, and that's something that they were lacking, was that individuality. So they would split it up into pretty much bigs, mediums, and smalls. So your bigs were like your O lineman, D lineman. Mediums were people like myself somehow, linebackers, quarterbacks, and then smalls were like your wide receivers, your cornerbacks, your safeties. It only just started to switch. We had a pretty good individual strength coach, because you all kind of have your head strength coach, and then each, I guess, group. So like your wide receivers would have a strength coach, your specialists would have a strength coach. He was good and started to individualize our programs more to be, more unilateral and working on balance and things like that, which was needed. The quarterbacks, again, theirs is probably a bit different. It's more shoulder rehab and whatnot. But there was a stage where it was just kind of like, we literally were virtually doing the same thing, just slight differences. And like I said, the conditioning testing was the same for everyone. Us punters who, and kickers that don't generally run unless we're doing a fake or something bad's happened, we don't need to be doing agility. But no, we'd be doing it because that's what the coach wanted. They wanted us all to be doing the same thing. So, there was times where like this would just not happen in Australia.
Yep. And when you're going through these phases and thinking back of it now, was there any concept of potentially creating a kicking consulting business, an online program, like where you're thinking in your head, oh, this is something I'm going to note this down. This like you mentioned, you love the technical side of punting, and it sounds like you're quite analytical and you like to learn. Did you know that was something that you were eventually going to give back and help others, or was it more just you were just obsessed about being the best you could be as an athlete at that time?
Yeah, I think at that time, I probably hadn't thought about that quite yet. Did know that I always wanted to be in sports science and in the space, and I did think it was going to be like I wanted to be with elite athletes, but honestly, I didn't really know, what I knew the area of the field and the industry, but not exactly. I couldn't say that I knew I wanted to be a kicking coach,
Yeah. And then, take us through. You were there for 4 years. What made you decide to come back to Australia? And when you came back to Australia, what were your plans and what were you hoping to get into next in that?
Yes. So pretty much COVID. I guess. Came back in March. So I was going to try out for the Canadian Football League and I guess the NFL, which wasn't expecting my NFL, but the Canadian Football League was actually a possibility. Everything got shut down. So came back and honestly, like my plan after those tryouts was to go travel the world. So put that on hold for a couple of years. But like I said, I knew that what I wanted to do, knew what I loved. And that's, like I said, you're right, very analytical. I've always loved biomechanics. So I got asked by Nathan Chapman to run Prokick Australia Adelaide because of COVID, had shut down borders to Melbourne and whatnot. So we had some guys from SA who couldn't get back to Melbourne. So they were here. So he asked if I could do that. And I returned to play footy for my country footy team. And I think just combining that and seeing that lack of, there's no kicking coaching going on. That's when I it just happened naturally to come into the kicking consultant to help AFL.
Do you think there could be in the future, for the, particularly at least for the players that kick out, let's say, in each team, there's a kicking coach, almost like there's a ruck coach.
Yeah.
Do you see that in the future in the AFL?
There should be. I don't get why there's not a kicking coach when you've got strength and conditioning coaches. I'm a strength and conditioning coach myself. I see the importance of it, but you're like, well, kicking is the most important skill. If you can possess the ball, you don't have to put out as much physical output. It would be maybe hard to employ a full-time kicking coach, but you just have someone that can provide valuable feedback, and maybe that's 60% of their role, but then they're also, the forwards coach or something like that. It'd be very interesting to see how much like video analysis they do on kicking, on the kicking technique and whatnot. I have had the chance to speak to a few guys who are in the system, but it doesn't seem they're a bit like we get told to kick less because they're monitoring our loads, but they've just absolutely smashed us in running, but don't want us to kick extras afterwards because they're monitoring our loads. So it's a bit interesting.
I guess let's just play with it for a bit. So let's say a club said to you was interested. How many hours do you think you need to be at the club? Can you only do it with players that are developing them, or can you do it with the senior guys as well? Like, what do you think would be the ideal if an AFL club said, look, we want to do this, we want to be the first to do it? You've been in it, you've done it. I know it's a different sport, but you could apply that same philosophy, I guess. Where would you start?
Well, it's an interesting point you raised because, like I mentioned, I did think I wanted to work with elite athletes, but I've found so much enjoyment of coaching the next level who want to get to elite athlete, and that's kind of where I felt like I wish it's something I had. And it is at that point where it's like, is it too late for those guys? Like you mentioned, maybe it's just the developing players that need it. So I think there's definitely room for improvement in kicking and ways to train it. And I think goal kicking can be totally revamped with players, just the way they go about it. I don't think you need to take 20 steps to kick a set shot when, you don't do that when you're kicking it to a teammate who's 50 meters away. So there's definitely some things that can be done. I definitely think there's obviously more benefit in coaching the younger age who can not create those bad habits. And there can be more changes can be made at that younger age. Once, it does get harder as they get older because they've had, 20 years of kicking or 15 years of kicking. So, like I said, there's definitely room for an AFL. And what would that look like? Yeah, a great question. I haven't really thought about it. Like I said, I did think I wanted to go into elite, but let's say, we want to hypothetically play with it. I think it's every training session, the first 25% of the session should be on skills and on kicking skills. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then a bit at the end as well, because you want to do it under fatigue. Yeah.
And you've got there's all your different types of kicks. Is there certain kicks, let's say, for those listening to the podcast, for developing athletes like you mentioned, then we'll go into kicking consultant and we can talk about the creation of that as well. But what are your favorite 3 kicks that you think developing kids, like you said, they learn the good habits first? What are the fundamentals?
So that's a good point, because there are lots of different types of kicks in AFL, and that's what makes kicking so hard. And my big thing is, okay, let's practice them. Let's do them. I don't like when coaches say straighten up and kick. Yes, there's a time for that, but there's going to be times when you're going to have to kick around your body. It's like, okay, let's practice that. So I'm big on that. It's not about taking away kicks. It's about having this big arsenal of kicks and practicing them. Obviously you're going to be more consistent if you keep everything straight. And I think 100% do that with goal kicking. Don't get me wrong. Unless you need to add some distance, it's natural to hook the ball, create more torque in your hips, whatnot. But I can really break down some kicking. I can go into a lot of detail, and it's definitely something I've learned through just punting, to be honest. And I vary it depending on who I'm coaching. So, if I'm coaching someone younger, I do keep it simple. So it's, how you're holding the ball and how you release it, what your body's doing at contact. So you balance your stability in your leg. What's your toe doing through contact? What's the ball position like? They're probably the biggest things. It's honestly the thing that gets the ball going anywhere is how it makes contact with your foot. So if you drop the ball well, that's going to help that. But also the way you make contact can be adjusted slightly mid-swing. So if you do have a bad drop, but your body can naturally correct it. And you'll see AFL players do it all the time. They might have this weird finish. It's because they dropped it slightly off, but were able to adjust it to then make it work. And it might not look pretty, but it's effective. So drop, trip guide and drop, and then what your body's doing at contact.
And then what would be your philosophy around working on your opposite leg? When do you start bringing that in? And
well, best thing to do is download my opposite foot kicking program, which is free off my website. Absolutely. So, I think it's about doing it, and you do just naturally get stronger at it, but you got to do it properly. Don't just get reps and reps and reps. You want to make sure those reps are effective, and you're doing the right thing. So, massive, easy one you can do. Literally, I could grab that ball and do it now. Just ball drops at home, ball guides at home. Getting that repetition, proper repetition, just to get, stronger in the grip. Not necessarily stronger, but just more used to it. And then when you kick, I always say it's opposite foot. It's naturally a bit weaker. So you've got to think firmer, locking that foot out, because you see it just, people kick it and it just it just like it's just there's no oomph in it. So you just got to naturally think, okay, I've got to kick this a bit harder until that just gets just you're more used to it.
Okay, yeah, and so you're working with Nathan at Prokick in Adelaide. Take us through how the creation of the kicking consultant came about.
Yeah, so like I said, I'd love biomechanics. Goes back, ever since I was a kid. I either wanted to play for an AFL team or work for one. And like I mentioned, I'd thought I wanted to work with elite athletes, and then I've just kind of found like, I want to provide elite level coaching to the non-professionals or those, trying to get to that next level. Because like I said, it's something I would have liked. And I want people to have a better career than I did. I wish I knew then what I knew now about not only like kicking, but just everything else to go with footy. So I just kind of saw that it wasn't around. We have, I'm a punting coach. Like, why is there a punting coach in Adelaide but not a kicking coach? I mean, there are some people doing it, but it's just like there's that need. There's it's my, I want to say, expertise. Like, I've literally spent 6 years just kicking a ball. I did studies on it in America.
The 10,000 hour rules were definitely
no, let's not go into the 10,000 hour rule. I literally just did an assignment on that for my master's. That's not it. Well, 10,000 hours was established based off of work from not Malcolm Gladwell, Erickson, and he did studies on chess and musicians, and it was found that the expert violinists who were teaching the students had performed over 10,000 hours, but that wasn't necessarily the criteria for expertise. And it changes within sports. So a sport that's played worldwide, or something like chess or music, which is worldwide, the level of expertise is much higher than, say, rugby or something that's a bit not played everywhere. So to get 10,000 hours was just some guy took that concept and then made it popular. Malcolm Gladwell was his name. He made a book on it. So, but definitely some deliberate practice and getting a good amount of it is definitely efficient for sure.
Yeah. And then for those that aren't aware of Kicking Consultant, what do you guys do? Is it one-on-one? You mentioned a free kicking program for working on your opposite foot.
Yep.
So it sounds like there's some things you can download. What are the most common ways that people work with you?
Yeah. So it is more the programming. So like I said, it's things that I wish I had. So I'm trying to make coaching accessible and available to everyone and affordable too. So these programs are range from $10 to $50, depending on what it is. I've got like a goal kicking program that just gives you, like I said, gives you some of my insights, and then, structure. So you don't just go to the footy oval and kick snaps from the boundary, I've got a really good kicking guide for not only kids, but for coaches, parents to then teach their kids. So again, it's like, I wish I had my dad teaching me this, and using this guide has, coaching cues. It has links to videos that you can only access through the guide. Very easy to use. I'm just trying to provide more ways for people to improve and for everyone. And then, I've got some off-season running programs, weights programs as well.
Yeah.
And then, I work in person, one-on-one, small group teams. That's probably like number one, and then online stuff as well. So whether that's like a Zoom where we have players' kicks and we go over the footage, help them out, provide feedback, provide a report, provide them drills that they can do to go back and then see them again in 2 weeks to a month's time.
Awesome. So there's, it makes sense in the name, kicking consultant, but there's feedback, there's a report. Sounds like quite a thorough process, and then you've got some homework to do that you can follow. And that's cool that it's dynamic too. Like, you're helping out the parents to help out their son or daughter. How does it work with teams? Are you going down to team sessions, or are you working with the coaches?
Yeah, so I try to work more with the coaches and instill how they go about it. So yeah, I make sure that they're involved, and it's not just I came around a session and that's it. It's like I came around a session, they learnt coaching cues, they learnt drills, and then they can go away and do it. So I've worked with teams, it may have been like for the first few weeks of the season, or it might have been one team like every couple of weeks come in, and I've seen just massive improvements with women's teams. Like the turnaround on improvement is in session, is massive. And then I think players, they like to hear from a different voice sometimes, but I think someone who knows, exactly. Like I said, I like to think I know what I'm talking about. So
yeah, you're a specialist.
yeah, and then they know, okay, our coach knows that, and I don't, then the coach can take over for the rest of the season and whatnot.
Just some specific things around the kicking element. So you mentioned that the stiffness and being strong over the ball with when kicking with your opposite. What about when kicking in the wet weather?
Mm-hmm.
What are some different cues that you commonly use to help with athletes improving their kicking ability with wet weather?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Great point. Because sometimes it is just slam it on the boot and just hope for the best. Surge footy, get it forward. I think a big thing you can't do is try to hook it too much. Anything that's going to get that, slicing the ball, that's probably the biggest thing. So making sure you're kicking through the line of the ball, which I like to teach if we're kicking it straight anyway, kick through the line of the ball, point your toe where you want the ball to go. And that's, pretty big in when it's wet, because anything that's slicing the ball is, it's going to slip off.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. That's good. And what would be some common mistakes that you see when you're working with teams, or, more from an athlete point of view? So what are some common mistakes that athletes are making when it comes to kicking?
I think not practicing it enough, not practicing it in the right situations, not practicing it under fatigue, under pressure. And like I said, they might just get stuck in kicking the ball straight. And it's like, no, there's going to be times where you kick around the corner, things like that. For goal kicking, I think the whole run up thing, I see people doing that. And I'm just like, why do we do that? And again, that's something I learned from punting. We kicked off 2 steps. We kicked it 55 meters off 2 steps. It's like, you don't need a massive run up. Let's just, make the process easier on us.
There's less room for error, I imagine.
Well, you don't have to think about, okay, walking in, what's everyone doing? Where's the man on the mark? Oh, there's the goals. It's like I go, there's the man on the mark. I stand a little bit further back. This is where I'm kicking it from. This is what, there's the goals. Okay, bang. 3 to 5 steps. And it's the best thing is in practice, one, you're going to get way more reps in than someone who walks back 30 meters, kicks it, imagine if me and Ben Brown, Ben Brown from...
That's what I'm thinking of every time you're saying that.
Yeah. And it's like, I would get 5 kicks in by the time you got one. But then it's like, okay, you make the kick so not insignificant, but it's not a big deal. And it takes the pressure off. And then say you're in practice and you're kicking off a couple of steps, and it's like, when the kick went wrong, because it's such a simple technique that, I dropped it inside. I dropped it inside again. Okay, that's what it was. That was breaking down. Okay, let's fix that. It just makes it so much easier when you just
What about it's quite unique having a kicking biomechanist that also has the strength and conditioning element. So for the strength and conditioning coaches that are listening, and this is also a selfish question. Something I'm interested in, but what are some fundamentals when it comes to individualizing your strength and power and balance? Like you mentioned that the strength and conditioning coaches started to evolve that in LSU. How do you think AFL strength and conditioning coaches should be doing that to improve for your forwards, your goal kickers, your Trent McKenzie's who are doing your kicking out? It's their one wood, where kicking ability. What would be some good exercises, some good fundamentals to focus on in the
great question. I'm glad we got to speak on this. So big one I want to credit is Kevin Ball. So Kevin's kicking guru.
Kevin at VU.
So he's a bit of a idol to me, to be honest. And I actually, turns out, worked with him when I went through the AIS. So I've read all his papers, and he's given some good stuff, and then done like kind of leaned on some research in soccer. And so backswing, what you can develop in the backswing and getting your foot further back to then have more distance for your foot to travel and pick up speed is going to increase your power. So exercises for that, anything that's strengthening up your glutes and hamstrings in that hip extension, is massive. I think forward swing can have a big influence on that. And I was one of those players that I wish I knew this, because my backswing has been pretty bad.
Is that a mobility, flexibility thing?
Yeah. I think it might just be structurally in my hips. Like, I've had 2 hip surgeries, and that was from birth. So players are different. And this is something Kevin's kind of mentions in his studies about being knee or hip dominant, and where people generate a bit more speed. So
you want to be hip dominant, I imagine.
Well, you want to be, like I said, you want to be loose to get your hip back. And then, but if you have strong hip flexors, that's going to help. But I definitely think it's what you can generate in the backswing to come through is probably of more importance. But don't neglect it. And thing is, but don't overdo it. Like you kick so much, you run so much that generally your hip flexors are going to be more tight. So probably best to work on the mobility at the front and the strength in the posterior chain. That's for big kicking, if that's what we want to talk about. So
like a Bulgarian split squat would spring to mind, because you get length through the hip flexor. And
100%, that's one of my favorites. I used to hate doing them. Now I like them. I like single leg RDLs, just anything that kind of strengthens up the glute med, so that balance. You want to be stable when you make contact. So if your hip's dipping, that's you're going to be it's not stable, so not powerful. You're going to pull kicks or whatnot. So I like things that kind of stabilize any core stabilization, like I said, glute med stuff.
Awesome.
And then power based stuff as well.
Which, do you keep that just simply kicking the ball powerfully, or do you
any power based movements, drop jumps, things that kind of work, stretch shortening cycle. But honestly, just kicking the ball hard. Like, I think to get better at any sport, it's to do the sport. I think strength and conditioning 100% helps, and it has its place, like, of course. But going out and doing it, you can kick a waterlogged ball. There has been studies. Again, Kevin Ball has done some studies on that, increasing the weight on the ball to help develop, strengthen ankle and hip flexors. So
that thinks of Kevin Durant in his younger days shooting a medicine ball or something. I remember. Heavy basketball or something. Became a pretty good 3-pointer, but interesting. Thank you for sharing. We'll start to wrap it up now. We've got the personal side of the podcast. That's a little bit lighter, mate. You can don't have to think as intensely for you, but it is late at night. But we'll get into the first one. So, which movie or TV series has impacted you the most, and why?
Oh, can I pick a book?
You can pick.
Let me think. TV series. Far out. It's a great question. I've got a few good
books an option.
Books an option. Yeah. I love investing, and I love personal development in investing. So there's a really, really good one that's influenced me, the cash flow quadrant. So for someone who's starting a business, like I have, that was great for me. It's not very sporty, but
good for the business, small business starters and those creating a startup. Favorite inspirational quote or life motto?
My life motto is just to make the most of every day, and that doesn't have to be anything massive. Like, it's not that deep where it's like, you could die tomorrow. It's like, no, just do something that is going to benefit you. Like it might just be, I want to relax. Like I need to de-stress, or it might just be listening to a podcast. It might be reading a book, but like make the most of every day. That's, things that you want to achieve. Do the steps, do something that's going to get you closer to that.
Yep. And what about, what are your, like in your work life, what are your pet peeves? What makes you angry?
I hate people who are late. I hate that. Like, yeah, I think that's just been developed from a young age, through the AIS, through everything. Like, just don't be late. Be 10 minutes early isn't really on, like, early. That's just on time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Punctual. Well,
Punctual, yeah.
What are your favorite ways to spend your day off?
Good question. I love going to the beach. I don't do it enough. Yeah, I don't know. I was just down there the other day and I was like, I need to do this more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know something about it. I used to go surfing at the Giants on my days off,
Yep.
try to go surfing. And just love being out in the water. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can agree with you there, mate. 100%. And then this is a COVID-free world, and you mentioned earlier you want to do some traveling. So,
Yeah.
favorite holiday destination away, or you could switch it into where do you want to go for this
Yeah, good. Yeah. So I'd love to go back to the US. But I actually had a flight to Switzerland, and I still have the credit to that. So I want to go to Switzerland pretty badly. I would like to do that via the US though, because it's just been too long since I've seen all my friends and family who live there.
Yeah, Switzerland. Have you been there before?
No.
Yeah,
I just the landscapes. I love it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, awesome. Cool. I don't think Switzerland's made the list yet, so there you go.
There you go.
Smart. Very good. Well, awesome, mate. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, but also your journey, the ups and downs and challenges and growth that you've made throughout being an athlete, both in Australia, professional athlete, and at college level in America, as well as now doing big things in the industry, both in the fitness industry as well as in biomechanics. So I really appreciate you coming on. What's up? What's on the horizon for you for the rest of 2021? What are you excited about at the moment?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me, mate. It's been a great chat. That's a good question. To be honest, like if you'd asked me 6 months ago, like where I thought I'd be, I didn't think I'd be quite here yet with my business and where things are going. So yeah, just want to keep growing and helping, have more reach to as many people as I can and really establish kicking coaching in person here in Adelaide. Would like to see where that can go with maybe into some more teams and maybe some AFL teams, like consulting for there would be cool. But I'm honestly just kind of going with the flow.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
exact same here, mate. You just go with and no better time to do it than the COVID world, hey?
exactly. Yeah, if it's taught us anything.
Yeah, very good. Well, awesome. Thank you so much again, Josh. And really looking forward to seeing how the kicking consultant continues to grow, mate. Awesome to hear it's doing big things. And thanks again for coming on. And thank you for everyone who's tuned in. Josh did mention actually he's someone who helped him out with his rehab at GWS. He is coming on the podcast next Tuesday. So that's our next guest, who's Tim Parham. He's now head physio at Adelaide Football Club, and he's worked at numerous sports at the elite level. So really looking forward to having Tim on. To tune in for that one, it'll be next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll speak to you on the next episode.